welcome back. It is the Chad Holmes Show on 98.9 WXCO. I am Chad Holmes, and this morning I'm actually being joined here in studio by our WXCO news reporter, Isabella Nieto. Isabella, welcome into the studio. You're all usually off working, covering all those news stories. Glad to have you here in the studio for our interview.
Thanks, Chad. Happy to be here.
And also across the table, we're very happy to welcome one of the Democratic candidates for governor of the state of Wisconsin here in 2026, the Milwaukee County Executive, David Crowley. And Mr. Crowley, thank you for coming in here in the studio in downtown Wausau.
Absolutely. Glad to be here in Wausau. Thank you for having me as always.
As I mentioned to you when he came in, this is the second time I had a chance to talk to you. I said the day before President Biden left the race, we had you on. I thought you were outstanding that day. Really were able to talk about the issues involving that race. And I'm very curious to hear some of the issues about your race now for governor. And again, really glad to have you here this morning. Let's start off again, the generic question that you always have to ask. Why are you running for governor? And I'll add to that. Why are you running for governor now in 2026?
Well, first and foremost, I'm the only candidate that not only served in the legislature, but actually have experience running government. I've had to balance billion-dollar budgets and actually had to tackle many of the toughest issues head on. And we've been able to build affordable housing for seniors, for working families, for people with disabilities. We've been able to implement our no wrong door model of care and making sure that no one falls through the cracks. And that has helped us to reduce our overdose deaths by 30%. But we've also been able to reduce the amount of people going to our emergency rooms and in our jails. And I think that this is a great opportunity for us to focus on a real vision, putting something on the table for Wisconsinites. And I think Democrats, many of us have been, frustrated not only with who's occupying the White House, but quite frankly, personally, I'm also frustrated with Democrats, the fact that we haven't put a real agenda, a real vision on the table that brings lost voices like young people and independents back into the fold, and really focusing on how do we make sure that when the tide rises, all the boats rise in every community in Wisconsin.
You mentioned the work that you've been doing as Milwaukee County Executive, and I imagine a lot of folks that you talk to here in central Wisconsin, maybe the northern part of the state, not aware of the role that the county executive in Milwaukee has. I guess I'm going to ask you a little bit about the job itself. Some of the positions in government are more powerful than others, more opportunities to do a lot of good. Could you talk a little bit about that position and maybe as well try to connect it with being a governor? How would it compare in terms of being an executive for the most populous county in the state of Wisconsin, and to move to Madison and be a governor for the entire state?
Well, as county executive, I am the executive. I'm like the governor of Milwaukee County. I represent 19 different cities and villages. They all have their unique personalities and all have their unique needs. I represent 1 million people, which is close to a sixth of the entire state's population. And so the things that we've been able to tackle, they cut across geographical lines, and quite frankly, they cut across partisanship. And within Milwaukee County, I control close to a $2 billion budget. We are responsible for not only the public safety needs when it comes down to the courthouse and the jail or our community reintegration center or juvenile justice. We also provide programs of support for our seniors, for young people with disabilities. And we provide all the mental health care. And we've been able to kind of transform and improve the models that we've been able to implement. But we also have our county transit system in our parks, some of our most used amenities that people care about. These are all the things, whether you're Democrat or Republican, these aren't partisan issues. These are issues that matter to every Wisconsinite. And I think that, I'm in a similar position that a former governor that we had, Governor Scott Walker, was in before he became governor of Wisconsin. No, we were definitely two different people. I want to put that out there. But I would say that being county executive is truly the training grounds when you think about being able to take the next step, governing an entire state and making sure that no community is left behind. Because as the county executive, I've had to tackle, issues like public safety, public health, but I've also had to be there in modes of crisis and really talk to the community members that I represent, and letting them know that I'm going to be there for them and make sure that they're not left behind.
Isabella, I'll let you talk.
So you have this, some of these big city experiences. You mentioned your time in the state legislature and in Milwaukee. Can you tell me a little bit about how you are planning to appeal to more rural voters that might be wary of somebody with only, major city experience? How are you working to appeal to rural voters?
Well, first, I'm a true Wisconsinite. And so born in Milwaukee, but I've never just spent all my time in Milwaukee. My father was a retired master electrician, and my grandfather traveled all across this state because they love the recreational activities that Wisconsin provides. So I've been all up and down Lake Michigan for some fishing, but also, going to places all over the state as well to do some duck hunting. But I will also say that, when I was first elected to the state legislature in 2016, I'm one of the very few legislators in Wisconsin's history that had to share an office. And one of those individuals that I shared an office with was Don Vruwink, who we both came in together. But he represented smaller municipalities, small town, rural Wisconsin through and through. But by sharing that office, it gave me an opportunity to learn a little bit more about rural life, what's going on with our agricultural industry, what some of our family farms are going through, but also how we can improve the recreational outdoor activity that we have all across the state. And so I want folks to know I'm going to be a governor for all of us. And my job is to go across and not only just talk about the things that I think is important, but it's important to listen. I think folks want a governor who not only understands what the struggle looks like, but that's going to listen and make sure that those who are directly impacted by the issues also have a voice to lend to the solutions.
So with that, what is your message to the Northwoods? You've mentioned that you have some experience with the recreational areas. Tell me about, what you want Northwoods voters to know about you.
Well, I want them to know that, I'm a guy that's going to always be me. I always believe in being your authentic self. But for me, one of my favorite quotes is by Teddy Roosevelt. No one cares what you know until they know how much you care. And so if you're going to, you have to first start building relationships, understanding communities, and figuring out what their needs are. And I'll be the first to tell you, there isn't a one-size solution to the many issues facing the state of Wisconsin. The question is, how do we right-size each solution to fit each community that's going to benefit not just those individuals, but that's going to benefit our entire state and really move us forward like our state motto says. And so I want them to know that I'm going to listen, that I definitely understand the struggle, and that's important that we all come together to make sure that when the tide rise, all the boats rise across every community in Wisconsin.
Again, we're talking to David Crowley, Milwaukee County Executive and Democratic candidate for governor here on 98.9 WXCO. There are so many different areas we can talk about, but one that kind of is close to my heart here in Wausau is the two-year college situation, because I actually went to the two-year college here in Wausau. It was the University of Wisconsin at Marathon County at that time. It then became the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point at Wausau. And at the end of this current year, it is going to be merging with North Central Technical College here in Wausau. And over the last number of years, we've seen a number of the two-year colleges closing down. It feels as though it's just a matter of time before they all go away. You've seen some of the discussions when it comes to the University of Wisconsin system, the UW colleges. What is your take on, I would say it goes right to the heart of the Wisconsin idea, in terms of supporting the colleges and universities here in the state of Wisconsin, because it feels as though it's been on a slippery slope for a number of years. And I know there's been a lot of folks that are saying, yes, Republicans have not done the job, but Democrats haven't been fighting for it either. Could you talk a little bit about your perspective on where we go with our colleges and universities here in Wisconsin?
Well, I mean, we can take it a step further, because I don't think it's just the colleges and universities. We see what's happening with our K-12 system, with so many districts having to go to referendum just to increase the amount of resources that they have for families and children. And I think we have this exact same problem when it comes down to our tech colleges as well as our universities. Now, our tech college is a little bit different because they have that taxing authority, right? But when we think about universities, and I'm glad that they were able to receive a bump in the last budget, but let's face it, we look at the past decade, we're nowhere near as far as filling the gap that tech colleges and universities have seen over the past couple of decades. And so I would say this is important for me. Many folks may not know, but I just recently graduated from college. I just graduated from UW Milwaukee back in December of 2024. And I know how important an education is. And so we have to figure out, how do we make sure that our tech colleges and universities are not only here, but how do we make sure that they're sustainable and affordable for the next generation of folks who are coming up right behind us. And I think that this is where I think, one, having a trifecta, being able to have the Democratic controlled assembly as well as a Senate, will make sure that we have the resources that are there, that are available for our tech colleges, universities. But even if we're not, we have to look at our tech colleges and universities as how did this increase the economic activity of everything that is happening here in Wisconsin. And when we look at these universities, many of the individuals who come from all over the country to Wisconsin, not just that particular college, but any college, UW System College, they tend to stay here, right? Contributing to the economic viability and the economic activity here. And so I would like to see an increase in resources to our tech colleges, to our universities, especially understanding that there's going to be some even bigger gaps because of what we're seeing at the federal level.
And that, I think, goes into a bigger picture as well when you talk about budgetary items and the spending that's needed in certain areas. And one of the areas I think that people, again, are a little bit frustrated about, that maybe, again, when you have a budget, as you said, when you have a couple of houses of the state legislature that are controlled by Republicans, and then you have the Democrat, the House, the state house with a Democrat, well, childcare. And I know that it's been an issue that has just been percolating, and I know it's leading to a lot of angst and concern. What is your perspective on it? What are your ideas in terms of trying to make it work for everybody involved?
Well, this is another thing that's important to me. I'm a husband. I'm celebrating 10 years of marriage this upcoming April, but I'm a girl dad times 3, right? And when I think about, my youngest, who's 6 years old, I mean, it was costing us close to $1,800 a month just to have access to childcare. And when you think about other communities across the state of Wisconsin, they might not even have access to a facility at all. And so they don't know what they have to do. And so people are making decisions on whether or not they're going to work because can I afford childcare? Do we have is it even available for us? And so we actually have to take a hard look in the mirror as a state and figure out how we're going to fully fund our childcare programs. And I truly believe that, we have to focus on birth to 3. Being at the county level, I've seen how those federal funds have been reduced for being able to pay for programs and services for, figuring out developmental disabilities at an earlier age. But we can't allow our young people, our children, our families, especially our young families, to fall through the cracks. And so we need to make sure that we have a level of universal childcare here in the state of Wisconsin. I truly believe in that because it gives our kids the opportunity to have a better foundation of learning, no matter what school system they're entering in across Wisconsin. And so we have to tackle this childcare issue. As Governor Evers said, what's good for the children is good for Wisconsin, because if it's going to allow us to have safer, better, more educated children, that means that we're going to be far better off as a state as we think ahead for future generations.
And kind of expanding on what your goals are, in potentially being elected governor, can you tell me a little bit about your Building Bridges program and how you're hoping to kind of bring that statewide?
Well, this is an incredible program that we started not too long ago. I want to say thank you to Governor Evers' administration. We received about $200,000 from the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. But we also put in some tax levy and created a small business liaison. And what this position allowed us to do was actually work with businesses. We want businesses to start strong, but how do we make sure that they remain strong as in those infancy stages as they begin to grow? And so what these resources have allowed us to do is, one, that business liaison provides technical assistance to help those individuals get their business off the ground. But we're being very intentional on making sure that we can identify commercial corridors that have been dilapidated, that have been sitting dormant for many, many years, and in some cases decades, and really putting a small business into that neighborhood to help activate those commercial corridor spaces. And we provide grant dollars from that, about $10,000 from the county, which is actually matched by working with the local municipality at the exact same time to make sure that business is starting off strong. And there's no reason why we can't do this to activate more corridor spaces all across the state of Wisconsin, making sure that we create more economic abilities and generate more activity for those local municipalities to generate enough tax revenue to pay for different things that matter most to them, which in turn can help reduce the amount of property taxes that folks are having to pay because of the level of economic activity that we're having locally.
And you've been on the campaign trail for a little bit now.
Mhm.
And in your experience with bringing this program to the Milwaukee area, what are you hearing from your constituents, your supporters, or maybe even your non-supporters, in what they're looking for from you, or potentially, what are you hearing that's most concerning voters?
Well, the biggest issue is the affordability crisis, right? I think if you are making more money today, you are still getting less than you ever have before. And so no matter where I go in the state, people are asking, how are we going to tackle this affordability crisis? Everything is rising. Groceries are rising. Utility costs are rising. Housing prices are rising. Childcare, healthcare. We need somebody who's going to tackle these issues. And while a lot of the economic uncertainty and a lot of these chaos policies that are coming out of Washington, D.C. are driving these costs up, it doesn't mean that we can't figure out ways to tackle this issue here locally. And I truly believe that, we have to focus on health. And I don't think that health is just, the physical and mental health, right? I think having a roof over your head is health. Having access to great public education is health. Having access to healthcare is health. And so the more we can focus on the affordability when it comes down to housing, which makes all those other issues that you may be dealing with a little bit easier, I think that's one of the first things that we do. But people want to know how we're going to keep these rising costs in check. But more importantly, how can we make sure that government is there to provide a service for those who absolutely need it?
Along the same lines, you mentioned access, and let's talk about healthcare access, because especially as you get further north in the western part of the state,
Yes,
we've seen hospitals. I mean, it's amazing to me to think that in the year 2026, 2025, 2024, in the run up here, that we're seeing hospitals closing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just unbelievable, and that folks, if they're having a baby, if they have any other kind of healthcare crisis, have to go hours in order to
Yeah.
get to a hospital. It is a crisis in this state. What are your thoughts on that? What are your ideas in terms of trying to alleviate some of the issues where healthcare access is just becoming more and more difficult for so many Wisconsinites?
Well, first and foremost, I think that, as a Democrat, this is when I push to say we need that Democratic trifecta. We need Democrats in office that are going to focus on a new vision in keeping healthcare costs in check. And let's face it, like, a lot of these things that are happening right now is coming because of the dangerous policies coming out of Washington, D.C. And granted, there is $50 billion going to be spent across the entire country for rural communities. But let's face it, that is not enough to solve the problems that rural Wisconsin and many rural communities across this country are going to be facing. And so we need real leadership that's going to be focusing on how do we work not just directly with the federal government, but how do we fill in many of these gaps that we're going to see because of the decisions that are coming down the pipeline from this big, beautiful, ugly bill, for example. And so this is about how do we work together? We need individuals who are not just focused on policy. We need people who are going to be focused on people. Because if you're not keeping people at the center of the decisions that we're making, then the policy decisions are only helping to keep money in the pockets of those who don't need it in their pockets, which is, at the end of the day, helping to help billionaires and millionaires continue to keep more money in their pockets and putting those costs on us, those local taxpayers, or those who are in the middle class, which is constantly dwindling right now. And so I do think that we need real leadership. This is one of the issues that I'm going to be focusing on heavily, especially having 3 girls and how much reproductive health matters to me, but also having a mother, who transitioned a couple of years ago because of kidney failure. Making sure that people have access to healthcare that they need is extremely important to me.
Isabella?
Is there any issues that you're hoping to kind of push for? And the Democratic field is getting pretty wide for this race. How are you hoping to stand out compared to the other candidates?
Well, I'm the only candidate in this race that not only served in the state legislature, but again, I've tackled billion-dollar budgets. We've had to tackle the issues that matter most. And when I was sworn in as county executive, that was May 4th, 2020. So many of us want to forget what happened in 2020, but that was at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. And when you think about how we, got us through not just the public health crisis, right, but fiscal recovery, when it comes down to public safety as well, I'm the only candidate that's had to tackle these issues. But I'm the only one that's also had to deal with crisis. This past August, we had devastating floods that impacted numerous communities across Wisconsin. And I had to be out there in the forefront, helping to assist community members on the front lines, being there to tell them that we're going to get through this. And I personally am going to make sure that no one is left behind. That no other candidate has been able to do that work other than me. And I think that's going to help not only me stand out, but I also think that the work that we have done within Milwaukee County, these aren't Democratic or Republican issues. These are issues that matter to our entire state.
One other thing I would like to ask is more of a overall tone or maybe vibe, feel about where we are as a country. And I've talked a lot about this being 2026, being the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And at this point in our country's history, having so much, I would call, hatred out there and having so much pain out there in a sense that people almost in a sense are using ways of hurting other people to get political points in terms of how you want to be a leader for the state. And it's not easy in this era because there's a lot of folks out there that come after others, and it can be so easy to get into the mud a little bit. Could you talk a little bit about how you would try to lead the state beyond the X's and the O's, I guess, if you're having a game plan in terms of trying to get things accomplished, but above it as a leader for this state, especially for kids. I worry that in this era, a lot of kids are growing up in an era where we aren't seeing the respect. I mean, even the use of language. I see leaders that feel free to use language that I just would be uncomfortable with as well. Talk about your hopes as a leader for this state, especially I think for the youth of the state.
Well, for me, I think that you have to authentically be yourself. And I think that, for me, that means that optimism is a force multiplier, right? I believe that you have to be open, you have to be honest, you have to be transparent as far as where you are, managing the expectations, but also letting people know what the vision and the mission is that we have moving forward. And so for me, not only is optimism a force multiplier, but I think that you have to bring your own weather. Right? Like today is a cold day, but I'm warm inside because that's the type of weather that I bring. But I also tell folks that even when you think about negotiating, I can also be a hurricane when I need to be. But I do believe that the best way to catch a bee is with honey. It's not with vinegar. It's about how do we bring more people to the table? Because even though we're having these political divides, right? And there's a lot of anger, it's being loud, it's a lot of boisterous, it's a lot of division. I think folks are tired of this division right now. Whether you're the most liberal or the most conservative, right now, folks just want government to work for those who works for those who are the most vulnerable, and making sure that it's the safety net is there for when that time is needed. And so for me, I'm always going to govern by bringing more people to the table. And I always compare this to walking into your favorite restaurant. When you walk into your favorite restaurant, you're having a conversation with that cashier or the waiter. You're not talking about their relationship with the cook on whether or not your food is going to be hot and ready. You're not, right? You're just ordering your food, and you just hope that it's good by the time you sit down at your table or by the time that you get home. There's no reason why your government isn't providing that same level of service when it comes down to healthcare, when it comes down to education, when it comes down to housing. We may all disagree on the methods and the way that we're going to reach these goals, but there's no reason why we disagree on these goals, because these aren't partisan goals. These are goals that help to propel everybody, no matter what letters behind their name.
Isabella, do you have a final question for Mr. Crowley?
Is there anything else that we haven't asked about yet that you would want, our listenership to know about you, about your campaign, anything like that?
Well, I guess I would say that, I'm a lifelong Wisconsinite, a husband, a father, born and raised in Milwaukee in the 53206 zip code, a neighborhood that's known more for what it lacks than it actually has. And, I want folks to know that I understand the struggle. I was evicted 3 times before I graduated high school. My mother and my father, they dealt with their own addictions and mental health issues. But if it wasn't for neighbors, teachers, and mentors that were in my life, and that helped pick me up and giving me the best advice when I needed it, I don't know where I would be. And so I am running for governor to make sure that every person across every community in Wisconsin has the ability to write a story similar to mine, that they can build themselves up, be able to give back to the community and take care of their families the best way possible. And so I'm looking to be a governor for all of us. And so if folks are interested in being a part of this movement, they can visit crowley4wi.com to learn more about me. They can sign up to volunteer. But I want folks all in every corner of the state to know I'm ready to get to work. I think that Wisconsin needs a workhorse, not a show horse.
There are so many other issues to talk about. I hope during your travels throughout the state of Wisconsin, when you're back here in the Wausau area, you can stop on by. We can talk about so many of the other issues, because I know that you could literally spend hours talking about some of the things that you would like to do and the things that need to be done for the people of Wisconsin. But again, really appreciate you being here in studio, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the campaign trail and talk again.
Thank you for having me. I had a good time in Wausau.
That is David Crowley, the Milwaukee County Executive, one of the Democratic candidates for the governorship of the state of Wisconsin in 2026. We'll take a quick time out and come back with more Chad Holmes Show on 98.9 WXCO.